May 19th, Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi died in a helicopter crash in northwestern Iran. This news was originally reported around noon on May 19th, New York time, which was about 7:25 p.m. Iran time. This is the chart from the moment that news was first reported. The crash itself happened a little bit earlier than this. Very significant astrology going on. We have Mars in Aries conjunct the North Node in Aries. Mars only conjoins the North Node every 2 years, and this is happening at the same time that the Moon in Libra is conjoining the South Node, forming a perfect opposition to Mars. Mars, in its home sign of Aries, talks about violence, violent injury, and physical trauma, and even death. Mars also rules Scorpio, which is the sign that rules death. The North Node in Aries and the South Node in Libra, these are the points responsible for causing eclipses. The eclipse in Aries that happened on April 8th that everyone was hyping up, that happened because the sun and the moon conjoined. The new moon happened while they were aligned with the North Node, which is the point where our orbit around the sun intersects with the moon's orbit around us. And when all of those orbital planes line up perfectly, we cast shadows over each other. So those points are associated with fate and destiny and are triggered by eclipses. So the fact that this Moon-Mars opposition happened perfectly conjunct these points made this helicopter crash a very fated incident, according to the astrology. Another thing worth pointing out is that this sun is in 29 degrees of Taurus. 29 degrees is the last degree of the sign. It's called the anaretic degree, and it talks about endings, the grand finale. It's an energy of dramatic closing out of stories and chapters so that you can begin the next chapter. Not only is it known as the infamy degree, but it's also a Leo degree, and it's ruled by the sun. It talks about high intense amounts of visibility, having a spotlight on you, even if it is negative attention. Especially when it's the sun in 29 degrees, there is very likely to be a large amount of attention or a spotlight shined on something, even if it's infamous or not good attention. That sun is conjunct Jupiter. Jupiter is the planet that rules international relationships, global culture, and the widespread exchange of culture across the globe. Not only was the Iranian president on his way from a diplomatic meeting, but it's going to have a massive impact on the global political sphere. And that definitely aligns with Jupiter being conjunct the sun. And even more so when you look at Venus, who's in 24 degrees of Taurus. Venus rules alliances and the interpersonal relationships of politics. This is the birth chart for the Iranian president, Raisi. Now, the most significant thing that I noticed in his birth chart is that his Mars is in Cancer, in 14 degrees of Cancer, which means that this Aries Mars and Libra Moon opposition that happened the moment of the helicopter crash was forming a perfect T-square to his natal Mars. T-square being a very hard aspect. One square or 190-degree angle by itself is associated with conflict and unexpected side swipes and collisions. Adding a second 90-degree angle from the other side is like getting hit from the back and the front at the same time. I call it the Eiffel Tower placement. Now, right after this moon in Libra forms the opposition to Mars, it enters what's called a void of course phase from May 19th around 11:48 a.m. New York time. So again, the news was reported at noon. From 11:48 a.m. on May 19th through 6:34 p.m. on May 20th, again, New York time, the moon is void of course. This is the last planet that forms an angle with the moon that's in either the same modality or the same element, because all these traditional planets, Saturn, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, and the sun, are in signs that are 5 signs away from Libra, so they don't form any significant angles. So as the Libra moon finishes the transit through Libra, it's kind of just floating in the void, not communicating with anybody. In the tarot deck, which is separate from astrology, though it is connected, There are major arcana cards associated with each of the 12 zodiac signs, and the card associated with Cancer, which is ruled by the moon, is the Chariot card. So the moon in astrology represents a chariot, something that protects you from weather and the sun, something that takes you to your destination quickly. So it is very interesting to see this helicopter crash while the moon or the chariot is in an air sign. It is an air chariot or a helicopter that flies through the air. Which reminds me of when the Titan submersible went missing. That was when the moon was void of course in Cancer, the water sign, for like 2 days. Again, really long void of course moon periods where this vehicle is just void of course. It's not going where it's supposed to go. As opposed to this helicopter, which is this air vehicle, opposes Mars with this accident or injury or this crash and death. And then that moon is void. That helicopter, that air vehicle did not go where it needed to go. It took them so long to locate the helicopter because it was so foggy and rainy. Like, look at this. It was literally just like lost in the void of fog. And astrologers will avoid doing things that need to go somewhere when the moon is void. Normally it's void for a couple of hours at a time. For it to be void for longer than 24 hours is a significant void of course transit. And those are days you should try to avoid flying, try to avoid sending out any documents or messages that are really important that you want them to be received. Those invitations that you send out while the moon is void, those invitations might get sent out into the void and not end up where they need to go.